There was a time when action RPGs were just Diablo clones. That time is long past though. The hack and slash genre has expanded to include pretty much everything from Souls-likes to roguelikes to even Platinum-likes and so many more. It's just impossible to really keep up as there's just lots to see out there, and frankly a lot of it looks absolutely incredible. With that though, my name is Fletcher and this is Xbox Nation, and today we'll take a look at the 15 brand new action RPGs coming to both Xbox and Game Pass in 2026. Kicking things off is Blood of the Dawnwalker, a game that might actually give vampire fans something to sink their teeth into. The genre has felt pretty lifeless, to be honest, since Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and while Bloodlines 2 had a certain few bright spots here and there, it was just not that great. Not to say it was bad, but it was certainly flawed in a lot of ways. Dawnwalker though looks very promising. It's an open world action RPG built around choice, consequence, and just shaping your own vampire story. You'll constantly decide whether to cling to your humanity or fully embrace the monster, and early previews so far suggest those choices will actually matter. One of the coolest ideas that the devs keep mentioning is the day and night system. By day you'll be a vulnerable human just fighting with steel and limited magic, and then by night you'll unleash your full vampire power while exploring the Carpathian Mountains. If both sides feel equally polished, this could be something special, so keep a close eye on this one. And number 14, we've got Clockwork Revolution, a game that really does fully commit to that steampunk style in the loudest way possible. Think of it like top hats, brass machinery, spinning gears. Basically, if it moves, it's probably powered by steam. This is a first-person action RPG set in the heavily stylized city of Avalon, and surprisingly, games like this are actually rarer than you ever expect. Despite steampunk's popularity, we really haven't seen any sort of massive immersive city to explore in the same vein as Cyberpunk 2077. This setting to me gives off strong Bioshock sort of infinite energy, especially with its floating architecture and over-the-top gadgets, but the big hook here is the time manipulation, as you'll be able to jump into key moments in Avalon's past. Your choices there also reshape the city's future. It's a really bold concept, and while it sounds incredibly exciting, of course execution is going to be everything. Microsoft really does have the resources to pull this one off, and how they've been with their previous releases in 2025, I'm actually getting a very positive feeling about this one. A lot of people out there are calling this a straight-up Control sequel, but it kind of feels more like a Resonant spin-off set within that same universe. This definitely isn't what most of us expected next from Remedy, and that's not a bad thing, but I'm still a little bit skeptical since FBC Firebreak was a different spin, and that game just felt really flat. The story though is set to continue, but the gameplay looks to be a major shift. Manhattan is going to be overrun by the Hiss, and of course they are the eerie reality warping force from the original game, but this time the focus isn't on gunplay. Instead, the combat is leaning heavily into melee, and what that actually means is it's still a bit unclear. Some moments look to be giving off some strong Devil May Cry energy, while others feel almost sort of Souls-like-esque. Whatever it ends up being though, the game looks incredible and expands on one of the best narratives from the last generation. Remedy doesn't really miss when they're this passionate, so this could be easily one of the most anticipated titles of this year. One of my personal standouts, which was first revealed last year and finally landing sometime this year, is Tides of Annihilation. I've actually had my eye on this one ever since its debut all the way back in February of last year, and now every new look has only increased my confidence within it. It's being developed by a studio known as Eclipse Glow Games, who are based in China, and the game blends modern day London with Arthurian myth in a really striking way. Combat is very fast, flashy and stylish from what we've seen so far, and is clearly drawing inspiration from games like Bayonetta, which is just awesome to see. You will play as Gwendolyn, the big popular figure within that sort of Arthurian legend, voiced by Jennifer English though, the same woman who voiced Mael in Claire Obscure, but this time she's on a quest that's tied to the Holy Grail with the ability to summon spectral versions of the Knights of the Round Table. The latest trailer finally showed some extended gameplay, including a massive boss fight, and it just looked pretty phenomenal in its motion. If it sticks to landing, this could easily be one of the best surprise hits, and you'll definitely wish you paid attention to it a little bit earlier. Now, this next game is being shown at the Xbox Developer Direct in a few days' time at the time of this recording, and it's coming from Game Freak. Yes, the same Game Freak behind the likes of Pokemon, but this time they're going down the action RPG route, and from what we've seen so far, it looks quite stunning. Their new IP is called Beast of Reincarnation, and although not much is known as we only got a glimmer of the game back at the Xbox Showcase in 2025, I now know a little bit when it comes to this upcoming IP. It is going to be set in a post-apocalyptic Japan, and it is said to be a land ruined by corruption and crawling with monstrous beasts. Humanity's last hope then rests with the protagonist called Emma alongside Ku, who is going to be her loyal canine companion. No doubt we're going to have to journey across this ever-changing world and then come across what looks like some mutated monsters based on real-life creatures. It does look great, but make sure to subscribe below if you do want to hear more about this one, as I will be covering sort of things you need to know about it alongside Fable and a few others in a video rather soon. Next up is Mortal Shell 2, and if you remember back to the first game, you already know the vibe of what to expect with this sequel. The original was a sort of smaller Souls-like with some really interesting ideas, even if it doesn't always stick that landing. I really enjoyed it all the way back in 2021, but this sequel looks like it's going to be finally unlocking the series' full potential. The first game had a strangely memorable world, branching areas, eerie hubs, and wildly different locations that all felt unsettling in their own way. The problem was that the combat felt incredibly rough, which held the exploration back quite a bit. Mortal Shell 2 though looks to be focusing on fixing that, and from the new trailers that have been shown, is smoother, more deliberate weapon combat with larger interconnected areas and even more disturbing creature designs. It's probably not going to dominate the year in terms of the releases we're seeing so far, but if you're into dark fantasy, grotesque monsters, and sort of that Souls-like adjacent experiences, then this is absolutely one for you to watch. This next game I'm going to cover has some serious expectations riding on it. Light No Fire is going to be the next major project from Hello Games, and if you remember, they are the studio behind No Man's Sky, and it absolutely feels like a spiritual successor. The pitch is rather bold as well. It's going to be a single procedurally generated fantasy world the size of Earth. What's interesting is that unlike many procedurally built planets out there that we've seen in games like Starfield, this world actually looks alive and definitely worth exploring. Even compared to No Man's Sky, the environments shown even feel more detailed and more intentional and far more varied. Gameplay wise, it's still a survival sandbox though, but focusing everything onto one massive planet kind of changes that formula in a big way. Of course, it's hard not to be cautious, especially given Hello Games' history, but after years of just refining that procedural tech and world design, they might be better equipped than anyone to pull this off. If anyone can really make it work, it definitely is them. Sticking with fantasy twists on sci-fi ideas, let's talk about Soulframe. This one's going to be coming from Digital Extremes, and they're the same studio behind Warframe, and this one actually feels like a big reimagining rather than a sequel though. Instead of guns and cyber ninjas, Soulframe actually trades in swords, bows, and a more grounded fantasy tone. The goal in that instance seems to be more simplifying their MMO experience, so fewer menus, more exploration, and also a world you uncover naturally instead of going through specific checklists. The movement is also going to be a lot slower and more deliberate compared to the likes of Warframe's lightning fast pace, but the combat still supports co-op encounters against large enemy groups. The early alpha impressions do suggest that the game leans harder into the overall atmosphere and storytelling with a stronger sense of immersion overall, and I'm kind of digging that to be honest. Given how well Digital Extremes have supported Warframe for years at this point, there's a lot of confidence going into this project. If you're even remotely interested in free-to-play MMORPGs, Soulframe is shaping up to be one of the most promising entries in this space. Gothic is one of those cult classic RPGs that never quite crossed into the mainstream, but it did leave a huge mark on fans of old school European RPG design. The original is loved for its freedom, brutality, and just complete lack of handholding, and this remake is clearly trying to bring that experience to a brand new audience. Interest is definitely there for me, just look at how high it's climbed to the Steam wishlist as well. That said, development certainly hasn't been smooth, as an early demo years ago actually worried a lot of longtime fans such as me, which isn't surprising because Gothic is really hard to modernize. To give you an idea, in this one you start as a powerless prisoner, but then you're thrown into a hostile world with multiple factions and zero mercy. The fights are going to be unwinnable, progression is incredibly slow compared to others within the space, and survival often depends on manipulation rather than strength. If the remake preserves that brutal sense of growth while clearing up the jank here and there, it could truly be something special, and it might actually appeal to the mainstream for once. Speaking though of long dormant franchises, Darksiders 4 is real, and that alone feels totally surreal to say. After Darksiders 3 has shifted towards a sort of Souls-like structure, many did assume that the series was kind of one and done at that point. Now it's finally back, and we're finally being promised control over all four horsemen of the apocalypse. The details are still pretty scarce across the board, and a 2026 definitely feels a little bit optimistic for this video, but hey, the announcement alone is certainly exciting. There's a real hunger right now for action RPGs that challenge players without demanding extreme precision or just punishing difficulty. Even Darksiders 3 leaned lighter than most Souls-likes, so it's likely this one continues that trend. Ideally, I would kind of love a return to the exploration-heavy, dungeon-focused design of the likes of Darksiders 2, with its big worlds, puzzles, and just a strong sense of adventure. Whether that happens or not, it's good to see this era of action games making a comeback, and I really hope they nail it. Capcom is finally reviving a long-sleeping franchise, and yes, it is Onimusha Way the Sword, and to be honest with all of you out there, I really couldn't be more excited. The Onimusha series started as a dark samurai take on survival horror, and it kind of shared some DNA with early Resident Evil before the later entries leaned harder into stylish action. This new entry though looks like it's going to be blending both eras. You're going to be thrown into a grim, monster-filled world that feels unsettling, but you're also clearly meant to fight back. The early gameplay suggests that combat is going to be inspired by the likes of Devil May Cry, but then slower, heavier, and built around precise timing and parries, and you can even see that in their glowing blue cues. Visually, it looks like peak modern Capcom to be honest, matching the quality we've seen since RE7. While the Souls-like influence is everywhere these days, this feels more like Capcom confidently doing its own thing. If the combat depth can really match the presentation we've seen so far, this could be a major comeback when it launches later on this year. The sequel to Lords of the Fallen has finally stepped into the spotlight with its first proper gameplay showing a few months back now, and it looks like the devs are actually leaning harder into what fans really kind of expect from this franchise nowadays. The footage we saw really highlighted a darker and more brutal take on that Souls-like formula, with a lot of heavy Gothic atmosphere, impressive and violent combat, and some impressively grotesque enemy designs. We also did get some very quick looks at several boss encounters and the cooperative gameplay, and a particularly nasty execution that really sets that tone. Structurally, the game is going to stick with that dual realm setup, which is great because I really did enjoy that aspect of the original game, and if you aren't familiar, this is basically where two overlapping worlds exist on top of each other. You once again will play as what they call the Lamp Bearer, and you'll be moving between each of the realms to overcome major threats and restore ultimate balance. If the early gameplay is just anything to go by at the moment, it's shaping up pretty nicely, and it should be a strong Xbox release when it lands onto our consoles very soon. If you thought that Atomic Heart was already pushing the limits of weird, then the sequel is going to turn that dial up even further. Calling it a Russian Bioshock might be oversimplifying things, but it's also not really that wrong. The first game was packed with enough absurd ideas to fuel an entire franchise, and now Atomic Heart 2 really does lean heavily into that brand new identity. This is a wild FPS built around experimental weapons, bizarre enemies, and strange gadgets that encourage exploration across a very large and very gorgeous open world. The original went through a messy, constantly shifting development, and you could kind of feel that at times as the voice lines were a bit fractured, and I have to say the protagonist was pretty awful. This sequel though appears to be much more focused, which is a really good sign for the studio. After a genuinely positive reception, the developers finally know what worked and what didn't, and from what we've seen so far, everything looks way bigger, stranger, and way more polished. If you're going to be craving Bioshock style madness, then this is easily one of the closest things on our horizon. Next up is Fatekeeper, and honestly this looks like the closest thing we've seen to a modern successor to Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. If that name actually means anything to you, you're probably already interested. Dark Messiah was essentially an early Source Engine game built around physics-driven chaos by kicking enemies off ledges, abusing ragdolls, and turning combat into a sandbox. The early footage we've seen so far of Fatekeeper gives off that same energy though. It's fully first-person, heavily handcrafted, and refreshingly old school. Don't expect flashy combo systems or ultra-fast action, and instead the focus is going to be on the character progression elements, investing in all manner of different magic schools, upgrading your weapon skills, and then experimenting with the overall systems. It's kind of both high quality first person melee games we kind of don't get anymore. Somehow it looks both stripped back and incredibly polished at the same time. It is being published by THQ Nordic. It definitely carries some Xbox 360 era vibes, and honestly that's part of the charm and why I'm just excited for it. For me, my personal most anticipated title for the entirety of this year just has to be Fable. We are so close now to getting our first proper look at the game since Xbox have now confirmed gameplay is definitely going to be shown at the Xbox Dev Direct, and it sounds insane. Apparently the devs from Playground will unveil a lot here, including the core themes of Fable as they will be returning. That means stuff like choices, consequence, drama, action, the British humour, and of course chickens, all reimagined though in this brand new reboot. I'm really excited to see where they take it all because it's still going to be based on the Forza Horizon proprietary engine, and if we take a look at Forza Horizon 5, that's a seriously gorgeous world. I know there is still some hesitation from many out there regarding the main character, however based on the fact that we're going down that sort of choice route, I fully suspect we might have more options than we even realise. Still, we should get a better look next week, and let's hope this is a big return for this classic Xbox IP. Saying that, do let me know what you think about all of these games in the comments below. If you like this video, obviously click like, and if you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so, as I will be uploading brand new Xbox content every day of the week for this year. Also, you can follow me over on X and Facebook as Xbox Nation, and you can also join the 1% Club by clicking that join button down below, like our current incredible members. Whilst here though, I did cover the massive Forza Horizon 6 news that just dropped, including a release date, so click the video on screen now or the link below if you want to check it out.